Hello, Maverick traders. It's currency recap time. It's August 14th. It's Thursday, if you can believe it. We're halfway through the month, and I know that my summer's about to end as my kids are going back to school. I've got my 2 cents. You guys know how this works. Make sure you take responsibility for whatever you get from these courses. I'm going to take a look at the meaningful news of the day. Let's take a look at things technically, and if I've got some trades to share, you guys know I'll do it.
All trades and analysis in this video are intended for professional traders only. This content does not constitute financial advice and is for educational purposes. This video is being released after a short delay due to Compliance Department review. Maverick members receive this content immediately as part of their daily trading resources. If you're ready to level up, consider joining Maverick Currencies. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits. You bring the skill, we provide the backing. Let's get into today's market recap and see how the pros are trading the currency markets.
Moving into the market analysis, folks, you can see it was pretty much just a risk-off day when it comes to the numbers. However, it was an interesting one. So the U.S. markets closed flat after an unexpected increase in the PPI data, and it wasn't a small miss, folks. It was way off. But the resilience of whatever sentiment's going on pretty much erased that, and we closed flat on the session. Jobless claims were actually in line with expectations, and we do have the retail sales and Empire State Manufacturing tomorrow. Now, the reason why I listed this, folks, is because I didn't think there was going to be that much emphasis when it comes to economic data. But what I've been seeing as of late, not just with the US dollar, but with all currencies, is a reaction to some of these numbers. So how do we finish? We'll take a look at it. The yen, the dollar, the franc up, pound, euro flat, CAD flat, Aussie and the Kiwi down. This is definitely a move from risk on to risk off. Taking a look at crypto, the S&P was flat on the session anyways. Crypto down 5%, gold down a little bit, which I'd expect a little higher, but oil, a nice little bounce, about 2%. Take a look at the individual cryptos, down relative to how they move. So if there wasn't any news, I would expect this to be, okay, just a basic move from risk on to risk off. So let's take a look at our outlook. Now, we have this +3 outlook because these markets actually took a pretty good turn to the upside after their first correction. We've talked quite a bit about this, and the expectations of a support level around that 6,200 never quite happened. It did get close. Here's your first round of profit taking. Now, folks, if you've been following me for a while, I referred to that as profit taking. A big move. There was an event that could have been a catalyst for the reason why, whether it was good or bad, I don't think it was going to make a difference. Dark cloud cover, great bearish candlestick. It did gap down, but since then, it has stair-stepped its way backwards. Green, red, green, red, green, red. And what's tough about this, folks, is if you don't follow the closing of each day, you can really get caught up in the up day versus the down day. Okay, the up day is an oversold bounce. Now I want to get bearish. Now I want to get bullish. Now I want to get bearish, so on and so forth. But if you take a look at the overall sentiment and the fact that this is actually not only exceeded that first high, it's actually above it. We have a very optimistic sentiment, which is what we have to follow moving forward. So we're going to keep it at a +3 for now, a consolidation. We could see a little bit of a correction. I don't know if we're going to get another round of selling, but we are getting towards the end of summer and maybe into September and even October, we might see a little bit more profit taking, something similar to what we saw at the end of July. But that doesn't mean that things are bearish or falling apart just yet. So let's take a look at the economic news. And what I've seen is just a couple of interesting things. I've been following economic news quite a bit because when I see good news, I see usually the currency especially would go up. Bad news, it goes down. Here's a decent example. I mean, here's the dollar. The CPI came in line, nice and tame, looking on point. The pound itself, here's a good one. We'll take a look at this. The pound was a very strong move today, showing that GDP was actually stronger, expansion, growth. But then we take a look at the USD here when it comes to the PPI. This isn't a small miss, folks. This is way off. It's a pretty big miss when it comes to the expectations of the analysts versus the number posted. It's pretty far off. And it was interesting to see what sentiment did with it. And that's all that I care about. It doesn't matter if the number's right or wrong. It's what the markets did with the information, and they actually pushed all the way back up. So we have to kind of lean towards that half glass full. Now, I made mention of the core retail sales and the Empire State manufacturing numbers. I have no idea what these are going to be. And you know what's cool, folks? We don't really care. The only thing we want to do is what these numbers come in at, and more importantly, what does sentiment do with it? So when you have things that are a little bit curious, the best way to follow the markets is what sentiment does with it. Because what we actually have to trade, folks, is the motion of the ocean and where the markets decide to go. All that being said, folks, let's take a look at our currency analysis when it comes to velocity. So let's start with the yen. We could see just a little bit of a pullback going on. I like the yen. I thought it was a pretty good stable situation to maybe compare with something that's kind of falling apart. A good push up yesterday, a little bit of a retracement going on right now, but it did break above and set a new high, and it looks to me like it's pulling back. The RSI as well, it's going down, but it's still above that 50. So I had to keep the yen at a +1 for now. Moving over to the dollar, that was the biggest mover. It was one of the stronger currencies for today, but it looked to me like an oversold bounce, and I think a lot of it had to do with some of the worries or the potential worries when it comes to that PPI number. But the end result was basically just a bear rally. So it's not the weakest stock, but it's not the strongest. I mean, it did have a pretty good move, but this is off of a bottom. It did get above an area that I was kind of concerned about, but we'll see if it can sustain itself there. If it can't, I like this RSI above the 50, but if it can't sustain itself there, then I have to put it out of favor. So right now, I'm just kind of like a sit on the US dollar as a 0. Let's move over to the franc. I like the franc because it was stair-stepping higher. It's a little bit stronger than the dollar. You can see a little bit of a slight increase when it comes to highs. It did come off of this low, but what I do like is it's starting to climb higher. The RSI is actually showing it, a shallower pullback, but if we can get above this area, I'll be interested in it when it comes to something optimistically. If not, it's just going to be a 0. So I decided to give it kind of the glass half full and put it at a +1 for now. Moving on to the euro. The euro was pretty much flat on the session, but it is at a high consolidation. So I don't want to say it's bearish, but I don't want to buy it. I imagine it might pull back. It might play this range for a little bit. So kind of a high base or a +1 situation is basically where I'm going to keep this for now. Let's go to the pound. The pound is just showing a little bit more resilience. Now, once again, this did have some decent numbers. It had a pretty good expansion when it came to its GDP, showing an increase in strength in the overall economy. And that's exactly what I expect to see in a currency with those numbers. And I've been seeing that quite a bit. What was interesting is today, with that PPI being as off of it is in the US dollar, we didn't get that. So, is the pound the greatest thing in the world? Well, I mean, it's super strong. I got it as a +3. But if it can even just kind of sustain itself where it's at, I might be interested in using that against one of the weaker currencies. Let's move over to the CAD. Now, the CAD actually was moving lower, and it did have a pretty good bounce, but it didn't really exceed anything that was for me to actually change my attitude on it. So here's the RSI at 50. It rolled back over. Here is an anemic bear rally. It's flipping over. Even if it decided to come higher, I would need to see something above this area for velocity to change to the bull side. So the CAD is definitely kind of a -2, -1 here for me. Let's take a look at the risk ons, and yeah, as expected, just kind of a rollover, broke a support level. This is the Aussie. It looks like it wants to consolidate or come back up, but with this RSI below the 50, I think this is going to be more of a bear rally than anything. Now, I kept the Aussie kind of as a -1 because if it did stabilize here and move higher, then I could put it back to a 0. Let's take a look at the Kiwi, as the Kiwi looks a little bit weaker. And what I saw here is that it actually broke that support level here, but instead of having the bounce to the upside, we have a flattening RSI and more of a consolidation before maybe a leg lower. Now, these things can change if based on any sort of announcement when it comes to tariffs. But where we're at, I mean, it's definitely out of favor. Moving over to the cryptos, just pullbacks. Once again, I said today seemed like a risk off move. And the cryptos, you can see pullback here in Bitcoin, still pretty decent. I'm going to keep these all at zeros for now. You could go 0 to +1, but the break below the RSI here and a flip-flop on the SAR, if it could get back up above this resistance, I might give it something more optimistic. Take a look at Bitcoin Cash, same idea. It's just a pullback. So all these are kind of in pullbacks relative to their overall patterns. Here's Litecoin as well. You can see it's a little bit deeper. Litecoin, folks, I could actually put that as a 0 to -1 because it's got a little bit more of a range bound situation than the others do. The others look like they're just kind of in bull corrective action. This one seems like it's a little bit range bound. Now, this is the most volatile of the four that we look at. So we'll see if it can turn around and run back up. But for now, I'm just going to kind of step back and not really touch it. So this is basically the outlook score-wise. The pound had a pretty good surge to the upside. I think a lot of it had to do with the economic numbers that were posted when it came to its gross domestic product. The Aussie, the Kiwi, risk on slid. So it's very difficult to judge based on some of these things that we're seeing economically, based on where we're seeing sentiment. And I think the only thing I can take away from here, folks, is basically you got to follow that sentiment to get actually your best trade instead of following kind of your bias and what you think should happen. So when it comes to possible trades, folks, it's going to be kind of the stick-to-itiveness and the currencies that can sustain a trend up or down over a period of time, more so than velocity. So let's go take a look. So when it comes to possible trades, folks, I'm just looking for the direction and velocity over the last little bit. Now, I know the US dollar has been on the weaker side, but it has had the stronger surge, which the CAD itself has actually been moving lower. So I do like the correlation. The problem that I have is these can flip-flop very, very quickly. So I do like how this broke out, a consolidation here. If this can sustain this level here, and this might be a good place for you guys to put maybe a stop and put yourself a target up at this area. Now, it's a tight trade. I would wait for a little bit more confirmation to the surge to the upside. But if you had a stop here and a target there, it might be something to look at. Now, that completely relies on the sustainability of the dollar staying strong and the CAD continuing its down to sideways trading. So it is more of a day trade. It is definitely a little bit shorter term, but I just like the pattern. Another trade I did like was the pound CAD, the continuation of the strength in the pound. I see a high base here going on against the CAD. Now, it's susceptible to the same thing that the CAD US was when it comes to continuation of weakness in the CAD itself. So if the pound can stay sideways and the CAD can drop, then I think this might have that tendency to break out. So I would be a little bit more patient on this one because you do want to see that happen. So the pound has been on a little bit of a tear. I imagine it's going to correct for a little bit, but if the CAD continues to see some weakness, this might be a nice breakout trade to the upside. Those are the only two on my radar for now. So overall, folks, the US dollar pushes higher after PPI data. US equity market recovers losses. I don't know if the optimism is just back. I'm not sure what those numbers were when it comes to PPI. It was pretty far off when it comes to the CPI, PPI. They usually correlate, but for some reason, it seems to me that the bullish sentiment's back into the U.S. markets. Currencies react to economic reports. I've been seeing that quite a bit lately. You guys have been following me for quite a while, and I'm seeing that good news. The currency will go up, strength, the currency goes up, weakness, the currency goes down. I've been seeing that. But the hard part is to try to correlate it with something weaker or stronger. So just because something's strong doesn't mean there's something weak enough to correlate it with. And so that's kind of the problem that I've been running into as of late. If you want to trade, please feel free. Just make sure that you follow your plan, play relative strength and weakness, which is very difficult to follow right now. But just make sure your position size correctly. All right, folks, thanks for joining me. We'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.